What's up, everyone? This is Xavier, your host, and welcome to the 210 Stockyard.
Yeah, I knew you was looking for me. B-Y-O-J. It's scrimmage day. Get fired up.
Okay, UFL fans, and as always, Brahma Nation. The first wave of cuts came and went. On March the 10th, all teams had to trim their rosters down to at least 58 players, and most of them did. And now the final cuts are still looming, just 11 days away, set to take place on Saturday, March the 23rd. And 1 week after final cuts, the season starts. Spring football will be back, and it's going to feel like Christmas morning. Or at least for me it is. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to break down the cuts made from the 4 XFL teams. Now don't worry, I will do the USFL side. It's just going to take me a little bit longer. You guys got to realize this does take a while and it is a lot of players to research. So if you were hoping to see a USFL team during this breakdown, hate to burst your bubble, gotta wait for the next episode. But that is more the reason for you guys to like and subscribe and hit that notification tab as well. That way you'll know when the next episode's ready. And don't worry, I will do a USFL side follow-up video as well, okay? Alright, you guys happy? Alright, cool. Moving on. Now let's dive into this horns first, starting with the San Antonio Brahmas. The Brahmas released a total of 19 players, 7 players on offense, 11 players on defense, 1 player on special teams, leaving 6 more cuts still looming. Here's a list of all the players that were released on March the 10th. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to literally go through each name here on the list. I just wanted to write all their names out in case if anybody was curious, or if you guys want to pause the video and look it up yourself. But I will point out that we did get rid of 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, 2 offensive linemen, a center, and yes, a kicker. The majority of the cuts came on the defensive side. We let go of 4 defensive ends, 4 corners, a defensive tackle, an inside linebacker, and an outside linebacker. So just from looking at that, I think Wade Phillips pretty much has his defense set. And with 6 more cuts needing to be made, I'm estimating we'll probably get rid of 2 more wide receivers. I don't think we'll get rid of another running back. We'll get rid of a few more linemen and maybe 1 other defensive player. But just by looking at this, I do think the defense is pretty much set. And it may go without saying, our special teams is set as well. And what I'm going to give you guys is 3 things. So I'm going to give you 1 cut that surprised me, 1 that didn't really surprise me, and 1 that really surprised me. And for the Brahmas, Kade Warner. This one surprised me, obviously, because of who his dad is. Kade Warner being a legacy, I just anticipated him having more of a shot. I'm not saying he deserves to have a spot on the team just because of his last name, but again, out of respect, in my humble opinion, I just assumed if they were going to cut him, they would wait till the final cuts. But I don't know, maybe competition was just that steep, maybe he was just outperformed. But good luck to you, Kade Warner. I thought it would have been cool to see you playing with the Brahmas this season. Not so surprising, kicker Matt Amendola. And before you guys come after me with this, because I've seen a lot of the hate online, remember that Matt Amendola has bounced around the league for a reason. He played with the Panthers, the Jets, the Texans, the Chiefs, the Cardinals, Green Bay, and then the Texans again. And the reoccurring theme with Amendola is he misses big kicks. Now I know I'm going to get a lot of hate, and I've seen all the comments online. I know people are automatically assuming that the only reason he was let go was because the Brahmas wanted to keep kicker Delahaye, aka Destroying. Yes, I understand he's got a big fan base, 6 million plus followers, all that good stuff. But if you guys actually do yourself the favor, go ahead and take a look at Destroying's YouTube page. Watch his first video where he documents his first week with the Brahmas. And in that video, you can see he outworked Amendola. He drives a deeper ball, seemed to have more mental toughness, and just had the overall better leg. You guys can disagree with me if you want, but I know what I saw. So, with Amendola's release, we can deduce that Destroying, or Donald Delahaye, will be the Brahmas kicker on game day. Now for the very surprising Drew Beasley. This one kind of hurt, I'm not gonna lie. I was shocked to see Beasley on the first wave of cuts. You know, and I'll give him the same courtesy I was gonna give Kade Warner. If he were to be cut, I would assume it would happen on the final wave of cuts, not on the first wave. For those of you that weren't with the team last year, Drew Beasley was definitely a fan favorite because he had big plays. He made sacks. He was a finalist for the XFL Awards for Play of the Year. He was named to the XFL All Defense First Team. I don't have all his stats in front of me, and I'm sorry I didn't pull them up for reference, but I do know he had a lot of pressures, a lot of sacks. Obviously, he wouldn't have been first team defense if he didn't. In my opinion, he was one of the anchors on the Brahmas defense, and it's just crazy to see Wade Phillips release an all XFL first teamer in the first wave of cuts. And I'm just wondering, and you guys gotta excuse me for what I'm about to say, but I just need to know what the fuck happened. Like, did Drew Beasley show up to camp overweight and out of shape? Like, did he genuinely just get outworked in camp? Did he basically cut himself? And if not, if it's the opposite, if he just got outworked, outperformed, out-hustled, I need to know by who. Our defense still looks great, don't get me wrong, I'm not concerned. It's just, again, seeing his release in the first wave came as a major shock to me.
Down by 2, plenty of time left. Picked off! Beasley! Doing it himself! Say hello to your new best friends!
Moving on. The St. Louis Battlehawks. The Battlehawks released a total of 15 players, 5 players on offense, 9 players on defense, 1 player on special teams. They have 3 players on injured reserve and still have 8 roster cuts remaining by the final deadline. Here's the entire list of players that were released. This one looks a little bit more balanced to me. Looking at this, it's obvious that, like the Brahmas, their defense is a little more shored up. They got rid of 4 defensive ends, 3 corners, a defensive tackle, and a safety. So it looks like they're just kind of trimming the fat. On the offensive side, though, they only released 2 wideouts, a tight end, 1 guard, and 1 tackle, plus a kicker. So it looks like their kicking game's going to be set now. But I do anticipate more cuts being made all around on defense. And from the look of it, I'm just going to assume that they still have more work that needs to be done on their offense. So the surprising. I'm going to go with the offensive guard, Christian Olmstead. This is surprising to me because he was on the squad last year. To my knowledge, he was pretty decent. And it's just surprising to see, again, a returning member from the team being released, especially when you still have pretty much the same teammates, the same coaching staff. I'm assuming similar schemes and playbook. So he should have had a leg up on the rest of the competition. So again, just a little surprising to see him go. The not so surprising. Corner, Montre Braswell. And I don't mean to make fun of the guy or pick on him, but I'm just not surprised that he was cut, as it's kind of his MO. He's been cut from a lot of practice squads. Not trying to throw shade at any player, just unfortunately, Braswell just hasn't had the best of luck when it comes to training camps. Now for the super surprising. And I didn't say his name, I was curious to see if anybody would catch it and react, but if you guys were paying attention to that list, you might have seen on the injured reserve list, Jahcour Pearson's name. Now, why is that significant? If you guys, again, weren't here last year, Jahcour Pearson was the #1 receiver, dare I say, offensive player in the XFL last year. To the point that I'm honestly surprised he didn't stay on an NFL team after his season last year. He was first in the XFL in receptions, first in receiving yards, first in first downs, first in missed tackles, and first in yards after the catch. And having the league's best wide receiver on the Battlehawks, with A.J. McCarron throwing to him, and with the other receivers that you still have on the roster, St. Louis is primed to be a very scary offense with the addition of Jahcour Pearson. Don't worry guys, he's not out for the season, but he will be out for at least 6 weeks due to a knee injury. So it looks like he won't be in action till the 4th or 5th week of the season. Who knows, maybe you guys might need that pick-me-up by week 5.
Ricky Prohl. Danucci back at it. Pearson's wide open. Pearson's got the sideline. He's got some get up. Casey Prohl, 6. 54 yards.
32 for Seattle. Danucci has a man open. Got him! Jahcour Pearson.
3rd and 3. Danucci in Seattle. Keep the drive alive. That's a good touch pass over the middle. Pearson stays on his feet. How about Jahcour Pearson?
Moving on. The DC Defenders. Now there is a lot to unpack here, okay? DC cut a total of 15 players, but here's what's interesting. They released 12 players on offense and only 3 players on defense. They have 2 players on injured reserve, and they are the only team on the XFL side to have 1 player listed on suspension. And after March the 10th, they still have 8 roster cuts remaining to make. So here's the list of everyone they let go, and as you can see, the offensive side has way more than the defensive side. They got rid of a total of 5 wide receivers, 1 running back, a tight end, and 5 tackles. On the defensive side, they got rid of 2 corners and 1 defensive tackle. Now this right here is telling me a lot. Despite having just cut 5 wide receivers, DC still has 6 remaining wideouts on the roster. I think they may be set now with their wide receivers. If anything, maybe one more will be cut. I honestly don't anticipate one more offensive cut to be made. Having released 15, I think it's safe to say that DC's offense is set. So DC fans, go ahead and look up the roster if you want. It's pretty much whoever's remaining on the offensive side is pretty much who you guys are going to keep. I'm surprised to see that they are struggling to release defensive players though. So with most of these teams, I asked the same question. Was there that much competition, or is there isn't enough? Or do you really just need that much more time to evaluate? In any case, for me, the surprising player was probably the same surprise that you guys had when you saw the list. And ask yourselves, who got suspended and how/why? Well, if you look at the official UFL transactions announcement that was made on March 10th on the cut date, you'll see there that 2 players were actually put on suspension. You've got the corner from DC, DeJuan Neal, and you've also got the running back for Michigan, Raymond Calais. Now, I thought this might have been due to the scrimmages that happened the day prior. Maybe 2 players got into a fight, and got suspended. And come to find out, the only reason why DeJuan Neal is on the suspension list is because he never actually reported to camp. Now, it's apparently due to an injury, and in order to keep the rights to Neal, they had to place him on the suspension list because since he hasn't officially reported to camp, they can't place him on injured reserve just yet, and it looks like they don't want to cut him either, so he's being placed on suspension. It's just kind of a loophole. The not so surprising, maybe a little surprising still, was the release of defensive tackle Boogie Roberts. Boogie Roberts in the USFL ranked 3rd in run stops and QB pressures, and was only one of 4 players to earn a 7.0 or higher grade as a pass rusher and a run defender. He was on the Pittsburgh Maulers last season, and if you guys didn't know, they were the team that made it to the USFL's championship game. They did end up losing to the Birmingham Stallions. And for me, I guess I'm not so surprised because of what I would call his perceived attitude, perhaps. Brahma fans may remember that back on December 14th of 2023, he signed as a free agent to the San Antonio Brahmas. Here's his tweet about it. He says, "New team, same dream," called himself the mayor, #horns forward. But then, just a few weeks later, he posts this the day before the first dispersal draft. You know, he writes LMAO at Brahmas, it's been real, and then waves goodbye with an emoji. And for me, it's obvious that he was pretty upset about the Brahmas not naming him to their protected player lists, which means he was available for the draft. Anybody could pick him. Crazy thing is, I believe he may have been blackballed because nobody really picked him up. He went to DC very late in the draft rounds, and then now here we are seeing him being released in the first wave of cuts. Even though he was an impactful player for the Maulers and was regarded as one of the better defensive players, standout players in the USFL, it just looks like he didn't have what it takes to make the DC squad. Now, the super surprising wasn't necessarily a cut, but a trade. DC traded away defensive end Chauncey Rivers to Birmingham, and in return they received offensive tackle Jameer Ross Johnson. The only thing that really makes this super surprising is one, Chauncey Rivers was on the Roughnecks squad last year in the XFL, and they had a really good defense, so I'm surprised to see them trade away a noteworthy defensive end. But also because, once again, if y'all didn't know, there is another Last Chance U star in the XFL, a la Chauncey Rivers. He was on season 1 of Last Chance U where they played in Scuba, and that's him right there in the picture along with, I forget his name, but I know he went to Texas Tech. So yeah, for me, it's just always interesting to see any Last Chance U guys on squads. I still like keeping up with them. The Arlington Renegades. The defending XFL champions released a total of 16 players, 9 players on offense, 7 players on defense. They have 2 players listed on the injured reserve and have 8 more cuts remaining by the final cut date. Arlington seems pretty balanced in all the cuts that they made. They got rid of one of their 4 quarterbacks, 3 wideouts, a halfback/running back, a tight end, 3 players on the offensive line, and an overall assortment of defensive players. So to me, it just seems like they're trimming the fat. I wouldn't be surprised to see their 8 remaining cuts just be split down the middle, 4 on offense and 4 on defense. Now, the cut that surprised me was wide receiver Calvin Jackson. And this was only a surprise, like I mentioned before, just because he's another Last Chance U player that's in the XFL. He was on season 3, if you guys recall, the season where they were in Indy with coach Jason Brown. The not so surprising was seeing quarterback Drew Plitt being released. This made perfect sense to me as, one, first and foremost, you have the XFL Championship Game MVP Luis Perez. He's back. And I really don't see Drew Plitt taking his place, especially since Plitt was benched last year. To make matters worse, if there was a quarterback that was going to contend for the starting spot, it would definitely be the draft's number 1 pick that for some reason went to Arlington. Yes, I'm still mad about that. But the number 1 pick, Lindsey Scott Jr. out of Incarnate Word. Lindsey Scott is a beast of a quarterback. He is dual threat. He led the Cardinals to back-to-back Southland Conference championships in 2021 and 2022. So 2-time conference champ. His senior year, he totaled 4,657 passing yards and 60 touchdowns in the air. And he also added 712 rushing yards and an additional 11 touchdowns on the ground. Over 5,000 yards of offense and 71 touchdowns in a season. And matter of fact, I would not at all be surprised to see Lindsey Scott at some point take over the reins in Arlington. And just to throw salt on the wound, the Renegades still have another quarterback option in Holton Ahlers. He's out of East Carolina, and I'm sorry, I didn't do any research on him just yet. Again, the guys, it's just a lot of players. And finally, the super surprising, and this stood out to me because I'm obviously a San Antonio Brahmas fan, but the Renegades released wide receiver Matt Landers, and he was immediately picked up by the San Antonio Brahmas. So this just gave me just a little bit of cause for concern for the remaining wideouts that are currently on the team. This just tells me that they're not impressed with what they currently have and wanted to test the waters elsewhere. Now, Landers' claim to fame is that he had the 3rd fastest wide receiver 40-yard dash at the 2023 NFL Combine, so the dude is fast. Definitely curious to see if he pans out, and if so, whose spot is he taking? And there we have it, folks. That was my quick breakdown and analysis for the roster cuts on the XFL side. Let me know your thoughts. Who were you surprised to see cut? Are you upset at any of them? Do you have any insight that maybe I missed? As I am admittedly biased towards my Brahmas, I'm sorry, I don't give other teams much of my attention. But I do what I can. In any case, please like and subscribe. Go ahead and click that notification button too if you want to stay up to date on the most recent episodes. I was so anxious to see the first roster cuts, and now that they are here and have passed, I'm honestly a little relieved. The Brahmas squad has 6 more players to cut. The remaining XFL teams look to have about 8. Guys, the teams are almost finalized. The season opener is almost here, March 30th, and we are getting closer and closer. The excitement and the anticipation just keeps building. Get your season tickets or single game tickets. I don't care, as long as you guys are there and you guys are loud. But I will see you on the next episode of the 210 Stockyard.